Last Friday, we discussed sequences and series. Today, I'd hope to take up continuous functions review. I had sent a set of exercises yesterday on continuous functions, and I hope some of you have questions on those. As usual, you can put it on chat window or you can speak.
So, could you discuss the 10th and 11th question from the problem set?
10th and 11th of the set yesterday.
Yes, sir.
Okay, let me see. Okay. Okay, yeah, we'll start with that. Anyone else wants to say something?
Sir, you sent a problem set on October 11th.
October 11.
Yes, sir.
Okay, what about that one?
Can you discuss the fourth question?
Okay, I've located that. I'll come to that as well. Okay, so others can add when we see it up there. But let me start with these. Yes.
Sir, the fifth one actually. Fifth one, the last subsection. Limit bn is equal to limit a.
Okay.
So what will be the duration of exam tomorrow?
Duration, do you have anything in the afternoon?
So we have English from 2.
English from, okay. So normal duration is 10:30 to 12:30 with a half an hour at least for copying and sending. But we can add another half hour to that. So by 1:30 you will have to send it.
Okay, sir.
Okay. Okay, so let me so 10th and 11th of yesterday, let me start with that.
Sir, where will we have to upload the answer sheet, like on Moodle or by send to by mail?
I'm checking with Aniruddhan, and that will be there in the beginning, the instruction. Moodle very likely, but I'll just I'm confirming with Aniruddhan, and then I will upload. That will be part of the first page of the thing. Yeah, upload to Moodle should be the normal way, because when email comes to me, people want acknowledgement, but afternoon I may not be free doing some other thing, so it may be better to for Moodle you can yourself check that it has reached, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So So number 10 and 11 or 11 and 12. Wait a minute. What was the things? Number 10 of yesterday's list, which is about summation un x power n. Yeah. So start thinking about it. I'm just trying to join with the iPad, and then I can. Oh. iPad is going, because I have changed the location, the iPad is going to create more time. So let me start talking about it so that you, and then I will work on my connecting with the iPad. Okay, so so the problem is number 10. Let me share the screen from here. Yeah. So can you see the screen now?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Okay. So we'll start with this problem 10 here. Okay. 10 says you have a sequence of real numbers, and for some positive m, you have that lim sup of nth root of un is less than equal to m. Okay. So for mod x less than, strictly less than m, I've defined fx to be this sum. So the point is to show that f is a continuous function on E. So to begin with, you have to first note that this fx is defined for every x mod x less than m. So it's that means this series un x power n converges for x in minus m to m for every such x. That is first part, and then we have to show that it's a continuous function. Now,
sir, I think it will be 1 by m. So mod x less than 1 by m.
why?
Because radius of convergence is given by 1 by lim sup of.
No, but here yeah. So that's a radius answer is having to recall noting it to some other result. Okay, but directly from here we can see that you take the nth root of the nth point, which is un x power n. So here you will get square root un, which is less than equal to m, and this is less than equal to m. So it will be less than equal to m square, whereas we want it to be strictly less than 1. So yes. Let me make it here. Yeah. So the lim sup of nth root of un is less than equal to 1 over n. So for example, in tomorrow's test, for example, if I ask this question, you should not use the thing about power series and radius of convergence, etc. Okay, you should use things which we have done in class. Okay, or in this given in this question paper. And it is very immediate because you take nth root of un x power n, it is nth root of un, absolute un, and nth root of absolute x power n. Nth root of absolute x power n is mod x, nth root of un is given to be less than equal to 1 over m, and this is given to be less than, strictly less than m. So you will get that the nth root of this is strictly less than 1, and therefore fx is defined. Okay. Now, continuous function, you can directly try to put an argument, but you may use the following result here. Okay, this one is for 11 is separate, 10 is separate. I thought 11 was giving something. Okay. So here we have to look at, let's say, fx and fx plus h, and or fx and fy. Their difference, we can put a estimate on that. So fx minus fy, summation un x power n minus summation un y power n. Now, because the series are absolutely convergent, we can rearrange and etc. etc. So while you think about working it out, let me see how to get the iPad also working on this network. Just a minute. Okay. And if somebody has an idea, they can speak. Solution.
Sir, can't we use the result of question 9 if we have proved it? I mean, assuming fx equal to x, which is continuous, and then applying composing it with polynomial.
Wait. Which one is continuous?
So the function, say gx equal to x, is continuous, and then we just compose it with polynomial.
No, but the infinite sum is not a polynomial.
Oh, okay, sir.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, if it were finite sum, you can clearly number 9 is used. Okay.
Yes, sir. Can I try for this question?
Yeah.
So, sir, we can take the partial sum, of the sum like n equal to 0 to k un of x power n, and we subtract it from like the same thing, but like x is replaced by y.
Yeah.
So then this whole thing in limit will give f of x minus f of y, and each of the sums also are convergent, so we can like separate them out, like, you know, like it can like it'll be a limit of
Yeah.
yes, sir. So then we can we can like take the inside part common, and like, you know, we can write it as un x power n minus y power n.
No. The thing is that if you take finite sum, okay, there it is easy to do. But infinite sum, how will you handle there? That is the question.
Yes, so like we first like do it for like finite series, and then we like take like the limit, like for I mean like we take the partial sum up to k, and then it's like we like I'm not able to explain it like without writing it, so like
yeah, so what you can do is, let's call that as Fn, okay, is sum from k equal to 0 to n.
Excuse me, sir. To show that it is continuous, so we need to show that it is convergent, right? And like we can compare it to. I thought we could compare it to a geometric series, right? Like, as in,
Yeah, so that geometric series comparison is what this square root n etc. is doing, right?
Right, yeah. So like that would be a way to just
Yeah, so that I mean that is exactly we are using it using this root test. So convergence we have proven. Now the question is continuity.
wait, sir, once you have convergence though of this one, right? Wouldn't it be like quite feasible to prove continuity? Like, I don't know. I would imagine that like term by term, if you go like for x
Term
power
by
n.
term continuity is there. How will you get the continuity of the infinite sum is the question.
Well, sir, because both like okay, it could even converge. Okay, it may not converge absolutely, right? So then we're not guaranteed.
No, what is not absolute?
Oh wait, it does actually because of this test. Yeah, sir. So like because it does actually converge no matter what the order of the terms are. Even if you like take it, let's say term by term, u1 times x to the power of n minus y to the power of n, and show that each term of like because both the series do converge and each term if you show gets closer and closer to zero as
No.
y
What
tends
you
to
are saying is intuition, but it is not a proof.
Sir, like I formed like I thought about it like properly, sir. Like the thing that I had to see. So like we can take like partial sum of like u n x power n up to k, subtract that with u n y power n up to k, like the sum. This sum is equal to partial sum of n from 0 to k u n of x n minus y n. So now this like the left hand side on limit like limit exists on left hand side, so it'll exist on the right hand side also. And in the left hand side like we can like write it as f of x minus f of y. So f of x minus f of y is equal to a limit k approaching infinity of sum of n to 0 to k u n x power n minus y power n.
Unfortunately, I can't completely understand what you said because
Yes, sir, it's a lot of like notation and
yeah. So let me try and log in from connect my. So I'll yeah. Can you see the screen now?
yes, sir.
Yeah. So the point is that if we write fy minus fx is equal to fy minus, let me call it fnx, fny plus fny minus fnx. Let me carefully sit down and write this out. So fny so we fy minus fny plus fnx minus fx plus fny minus fnx. So I have this fny, fnx, I have added and subtracted and then rearranged them. So these two things, fy minus fny and fnx minus fx. Okay. Remember, both x and y are less than m and all that. Okay. So we can separately show that when y is close to x, both these quantities, it doesn't matter what y and x are. In fact, y and x less than equal to some m dash, which is strictly less than m. We can give a bound on these, independent of x and y. And then, so what we can, this is called a epsilon by 3 argument. Okay. So we can make each of these terms less than epsilon by 3 for a suitably large n, and fix such a n, and then fny minus fx follows, the proximity will follow, epsilon delta thing will follow from problem number 9. Do you see that now?
So could you repeat?
Okay. So firstly, this expression you see that you grant, right? Fy minus fx, I have written by adding and subtracting fny, adding and subtracting fnx.
Yeah.
Okay. Now the let us first focus on the two terms which are circled, okay, by yellow. All right. So our x is fixed, and let's call that mod x is less than equal to, let me call that capital K less than strictly less than m. Okay, so mod x is strictly less than m. So let us fix a capital K, which is between mod x and mod n. Okay, then if mod y is also less than capital K, we can only, based on capital K, we can make these two terms small, these circle terms, because fy minus fnx is less than equal to okay, let me open a new blank page. Difficult to do it here. Where are my blank pages gone? Okay. So we had search my blank pages. Sorry. Let me manage here only because I'm struggling to find the page where I want to write. Okay, so let's look at fy minus fny. It is summation from k equal to n to infinity un xn un yn. In absolute value, it will be summation from n to infinity uk xk mod un mod xk. And mod x or mod y, whichever we take, they will be less than equal to k. And un will be less than equal to 1 over m, this nth root. So that will be controlled. And so only based on capital K, but nothing to do with mod x and mod y, we can choose a n naught such that the two encircled terms are less than epsilon, each less than epsilon by 3. And then once you have fixed such a n which is above that value, then we can get fny and fx close to each other. That will be problem 9. Meanwhile, I will try to locate a blank page, and while you are looking at this, and then I can come back and write on that also. Okay, so now I have located the blank page. Yeah. So our task was the following. We had mod x less than n. Then we choose a k which is halfway between the two, let's say. So then if mod y is also less than k, we get that fn y minus fx absolute value is less than equal to summation m equal to n to infinity um because fn is just sum up to first n terms, and fx is sum from that to infinity. So in fact, it is n plus 1. Why not? Be precise. Yeah. Do you see this? fnx is sum from up to n, and fx is sum from up to infinity. So if we subtract the two, it is basically sum up to sum of these from n plus 1 to infinity. And we have taken absolute value. So mod un, mod un. Now, if mod x is less than k, mod y is also less than k, then this quantity is less than k power m, and mod un nth root. So we will get that this is less than equal to so we can get a n naught such that for n bigger than equal to n naught, this sum will be less than equal to summation m equal to n plus 1 to infinity fortunately, the term m is going to confuse. So And same here. As I had said, if you had sent this to me earlier, I would have written out the thing and showed you right in the beginning, but no, you didn't say that this is what you want me to do. So that's why it is taking time. Anyway, so the idea is this, that independently of x and y, we focus that for large enough n, the fnx minus fx and fny minus fy, these terms are giving a small value, epsilon by 3, we can choose. And then fnx and fny, difference between them can be made less than epsilon by 3 in view of problem 9. So I will record, today itself, at the end, I will write it out and send you the solution for this problem. But I have explained it now. Right?
So the partial sums from Cauchy sequence for mod. So we can choose n great.
No, wait. No, you are saying what?
The modulus of partial sums from Cauchy sequence. If it is convergent.
So, but then that part depends on the point x. That is the whole point. For each x, convergence is not a problem. But
Sir, I was talking about fnx minus f of x, not f of x minus f of y.
Yeah, so that we have discussed already and come to this. Yeah, we can use partial sum idea. You can, whatever way you want to do it.
Okay, sir.
Okay, but if you say Cauchy sequence, etc., but then the dependent, just to say that each fx is well defined, you can do that, yes. But to estimate fnx minus fx, this difference, you will need this. Just Cauchy sequence will not do. You see what I'm saying? I don't know exactly what you are aiming at, but
Sir, for Cauchy sequence, we can choose for any epsilon, we can choose n0 such that for all mn greater than n0, an minus am less than epsilon.
yes. But that would depend on the point x. That is the whole point. If you just use the Cauchy sequence idea.
Okay, sir.
The n0 will depend on the point x, whereas we want to get a point, get a n0 which will be working for all y's as well. X is fixed, but y is not fixed, you see. We want y to be close to x. Yeah. So, as I just mentioned, this idea that you want to estimate and we have divided into 3 parts by adding, for each one we are approximating by fn. So we are writing it as in 3 parts. One is so this first difference is less than equal to this plus this plus this, sum of these 3 terms. That is straightforward. Okay. Now the point is that so if we look at the third one, this last one here, Okay. We can control and show it is less than epsilon by 3 for y close to x, etc. But for that, we need to fix a n. Whereas 1 and 2, we can choose a n so that they are small without depending on x and y. So this trick is called epsilon by 3 argument. Because you want to show this is less than epsilon, you split it into 3 parts and each of them you say epsilon by 3. Okay. So because our x and that is why k brought in between m and x, because if we take this k, then we can choose a delta such that mod x plus delta is still less than k. Because mod x is less than k, mod x plus delta will also be strictly less than k. And therefore, any y in x plus delta, x minus delta to x plus delta will be less than k. And therefore, mod x power m or mod y power m, etc. will be appropriate powers of capital K. And the mod un, etc. will be for large n less than equal to 1 by m. So all those things pan out. Okay. So I will carefully write this problem and send you. Now let me come to 11. So firstly, what in the bottom I have written, you may use that part. So you have two sequences, AN and BN, two sequences, and Cn is defined a new sequence which is defined like this. You take summation Aj Bn minus j, j equal to 0 to n. And this was a problem which I had sent earlier in the, forget in which list. Okay. So if summation, if one of these two summations is absolutely convergent and the other one just requires convergence, then the summation of C can be is the same as summation of A and summation of B product thereof. Okay. So in the exercise where I have given this, I have given the intermediate steps which will lead you to this result. Just by itself, staring at it, you may not be able to prove this part which is in the bottom just now. Okay. So you can trace one of the exercise sets last 10 days. This has been split into 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and all of them together give you this result. Okay. And I'm written here, you may use this result. So firstly, since the nth root of un, once again, this m and 1 over m is confusing to me. I think in both these also it should be 1 over m. Because then for x less than m, it will go like that. Yeah.
Sir,
Yeah.
so in the remark, it has to be, one of them has to be absolutely convergent, right? Like
Yes.
B.
Yes.
So it doesn't work if neither are absolutely.
Yes, there are examples where if neither one is absolutely convergent, both are conditionally convergent, then the result fails. Yes.
Okay, sir.
Hmm. In fact, I mean, this was something which was worked about maybe 70, 80 years ago. And yeah, so it is shown there that absolute convergence of, so it may happen that both are convergent and their product thing also works. Both, neither is absolutely convergent, but somehow it works out. So the statement is that suppose B is a convergent sequence. If you want that for all convergent sequences A, this result should hold, then you must need that B is absolutely convergent. Otherwise, you can always cook up an example where it will fail.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Okay. So that is an important result by itself. And now let us come to 11. Okay. So the same thing is now being, the application to 11 is actually very trivial once you have noted this, because you just take it to un equal to x power n and vn to be vn x power n. Given conditions will ensure that both of them are absolutely convergent. And wn x power n will be exactly this object, Cn. When you take A to be an to be un xn, vn, bn to be vn xn, then wn xn will exactly be equal to Cn in this example. Because you look at wn xn, so x power n is multiplied in this. Okay. If you take x power n is being multiplied to wn, it is multiplied to each term on the right hand side. But x power n we can write as x power j times x power n minus j. And that will give you the required expression. So the setup is more complicated, but if you use the second part that I've encircled, using that, the result here is almost trivial, because you have to just identify appropriately what is your A, what is your B, etc., and what is your C, and you get this result.
Excuse me, sir. It
Yeah.
converges to like the product of like the entire sum of AJ times, the whole sum of BJ, but I would imagine it would actually converge to the square root of the sum from j equals 0 to infinity of AJ squared and the square root times the square root of
No.
okay.
No. In fact, let's do since you mentioned it, let's do the simplest case. Okay. So let's do this x power n thing only, because the other one is not visible where exactly. So let's take the case where each is only 1 plus x. So u0 and u1 are 1. Okay. And other u's are all zeros. Likewise v's. Okay.
Oh.
So it is 1 plus x times 1 plus x. So that will be 1 plus 2x plus x square. And that is what you will get when you do this summation business. C0 will be 1, C1 will be 2, and C2 will be 1 again. That is W0, W1, W2 will be 1, 2, 1, and that's it.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Yeah. So what you said, perhaps it was like intuition that when you are multiplying, you should get x squares, but The point is,
No, sir, it was like actually applying the Cauchy-Schwarz inequality to that finite sum first.
Cauchy
and
Schwarz
then-
will give you a, yeah. But here you have something more. You can get exactly what it is equal to. Yeah. So let me share with you another trick which is very commonly done. So let's say, right now it is infinite sum, but let's say you wanted to share something about j equal to 0 to 100 aj, j equal to 0 to 100 bj. Okay. Now, what do you do with these? Both are summations over j, but the problem becomes easy if one of them, let's keep this as summation over j aj, but the second one, okay, summation over j bj is, we can write it as summation over k bk. Instead of j, use k. All right. So make these two summations with different indices. Okay. And then you can move in and move out. So therefore, summation j equal to 0 to 100 aj, summation j equal to 0 to 100 bj. If this j, we change it to k, okay. Now this we can write it as summation j equal to 0 to 100 summation k equal to 0 to 100 aj bk. Okay. Now life becomes easy. So that is how this kind of things are usually handled. And in this case, a little more trick is involved, but anyway, this is a usual way of trying to put this. Right. In this example, another way to do this would be, now you have summation over j and summation over k. So you split it as j plus k equal to t. That will also be t equal to 0 to 200 now. And once you fix a t and one of the variables, the other one gets fixed. Do you see what I'm saying? T equal to 0 to 200, and then summation over j, summation over k, but then you put an indicator of j plus k equal to t. Whichever ways you do it, but is not needed in this problem because the answer is already given to you. But when you want to product of two series, even if the summation index is the same in both, in one of them you make it another index and then you can mix and match. Okay. So one general thing which I said the other day also, that for a problem, if you want to use something done in the class, you can use it as long as your given problem is not exactly the same as what you are trying to claim. Okay, it's a different notation.
Sir?
Yeah.
On a related note, there is an alternate definition of lim sup and lim inf, which involves like the supremum and infimum of a set of limit points. We haven't covered that in class, but would we be allowed to use that in the exam without proof, or should we prove it?
No, if you use any such thing which you have not done in the class, you should prove it.
Okay, sir. Okay. Okay, sir. Yeah, thank you.
Otherwise, what can happen is something equivalent is stated in some book somewhere and you just quote that, creates a bit of a problem. Okay. Now,
Right. Okay, sir.
Can we use results that we have proved in assignments?
sorry.
Can we use results that we have proved in assignments?
Yeah. Even if you have not proved, but I have quoted it in an assignment, you can still use it. Okay. But you have to state it precisely.
So is it not sufficient to, for example, say just the theorem name like Bolzano-Weierstrass?
I would prefer not to. Okay. Because then the nomenclatures differ. Then you will say, no, sir, we didn't use it in the class, but this book calls this Bolzano-Weierstrass. That is what I am using. Okay. So best is to precisely state that.
Okay, sir.
Okay. So I wanted why I have changed my why I have put another page on the screen is the following. Let's say some problem where there are parts 1, 2, 3 or 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever. Okay. In this case, there 2 doesn't seem to be related with 1, but there could be cases where 2 is related to 1. Let's say you are unable to do 1. Okay. But you want to do 2 which uses 1. You can do that, and if you can successfully argue that 2 follows from 1, even if you have not done 1 and you quote that, you will get full credit for 2. Okay. In my exam, it may not be so with all teachers. So often what I do, because some of my teachers did that to me and I thought it was a good way of learning, that even if the problem is complicated, you split it into several parts which are simple. Even if you are able to do parts of those problems and not all, you will still get the credit for the parts you have done. I see now 2 screenshots. There's some noise going on outside the house, so yeah. So anyway, I agree with the chat that, yeah. The thing is, infinite sums, one has to be very careful that whether that is making sense or not. Okay. This evening I happen to be free. So tomorrow is the exam. Do you think you will have some more questions to ask me in the evening?
Sir, I actually have a question.
Yeah.
Sir, could you once again prove the rearrangement of a series has the converges to the same value?
Okay. All right. So, okay, let me put up a blank page and we'll come back. So let me see if I got you right. That you have a series. You have a series summation A, and you are given that it is absolutely convergent. And suppose you have a rearrangement, let's call it ANI is BI, and then you wanted to show that summation I equal to 1 to infinity BI is also equal to alpha. Is that your question?
Sir, actually, all AN are greater than equal to 0.
Okay, that is even easier. All right. So okay. So let's look at this. Summation AN equal to alpha gives you that given an epsilon, there is a N naught such that once you have summed up to N naught, all after that will be greater than equal to alpha minus epsilon. This is strange. Different pages get a cutoff at different time points. Okay. Now so the blank page is of useless, so I have to find another blank page. Sorry. This should be. So ANs are positive, summation AN is equal to alpha N1, N2, Nk. This is a rearrangement, and Bi is equal to ANI. Okay. So given an epsilon, we have an N naught such that summation N equal to 1 to N naught. AN is already greater than equal to alpha minus epsilon. You go anywhere above N naught, you are only going to add positive numbers, so it will stay. So suffices to write here that the sum up to N naught itself gives you greater than equal to alpha minus epsilon, and then you are done. Okay. Now, summation I equal to 1 to K Bi is equal to summation I equal to 1 to K A of Ni. So the idea is that if summation ANI, it already contains all the points A1 up to A1 up to AN naught. And then there are a few more that will be bigger than equal to alpha minus epsilon. So all you want now is that this set if you call this the set AK, all right. then all you want is that this set AK contains 1, 2 up to n naught. And that such a K will exist is very easy because you first keep going till you get the number 1. Then if 2 is not there already included in your set, you include 2 and so on. So in finitely many steps, you will get that it contains all n1 to n0.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So there exists a K such that this holds. And once that is true, then summation bi, this will be greater than equal to summation n equal to 1 to n0 a n I. Okay.
Yes, sir. Got it. Thank you, sir.
So it may make it easier for you to use. So let me introduce just this notation for radius of convergence of a power series. It's not a must, but since one of you use that, okay, then let's look at nth root of an lim sup of this 1 over t is said to be radius of convergence of this power series. And what this means is that if mod x is less than 1 over t, or we can call this r equal to 1 over t or r. If mod x is less than 1 over t, that is r, then this series is absolutely convergent. Okay. And in fact, we have shown that it is continuous function defined, and if you call that fx, then it is continuous. At mod x equal to r, indeterminate. It could be converging, it need not be converging. And for mod x strictly bigger than r, it is diverging. It does not converge because the nth term itself doesn't go to 0. Okay. And how do you interpret this when capital T is 0? There is no 1 over 0 defined by us. So r equal to 1 over t when t is finite, and if t is 0, sorry, if t is positive, and if when t is 0, you define r to be infinity. Again, think of it only as a notation, and every number is less than infinity. Every positive number is less than, every positive real number is less than infinity. So then the series is converging on the entire real number system. And the easy example that is an equal to 1 over factorial n. The nth root of 1 over factorial n lim sup is 0. And that series summation x power n 1 over n. All of you know it as exponential series, but through this trick we will be able to show that this series converges for every x And actually then our thing will also show it converges to a continuous function. So those who want to use radius of convergence by stating it precisely, you can use this notion of radius of convergence. But it is not a must that you have to mug it up and use it, because whatever I ask you will be able to do it without using this radius of convergence notion. But so, for example, this problem 2 here about continuity if and only if sequential convergence for every sequence an converging to a, fan, fan is fa. So if I ask you to prove this, obviously you can't use this to prove itself, but any other problem you can use it. But this is a very difficult to define do's and don'ts, but you have to understand that. For example, point number 3 here, okay, that ratio of two continuous functions is continuous if the denominator is not 0 anywhere. Now, a corresponding thing will be there for sequences. That is, an goes to a and bn goes to b, where b is not 0, then an by bn will go to a by b. But if you use problem 2 and that statement to conclude 3, that's kind of middle way. It's not quite very clean, because you are using essentially the same result. So midsem, one more rule, not rule, one more thing is that if you have what you have written, there is some doubt in my mind whether you have understood it correctly, whether you have written correctly, etc., etc. I will, on a pre-arranged time, I can call you and ask you to explain. I won't ask you fresh questions, but I can ask you to explain something that you may have written. Okay. So, in my instructions, I will write clearly that give a mobile number and a WhatsApp number where I can send a message, or to fix a time when to call. I'll put that in my question paper. But
so
yeah.
if we use previous result, do we have to we will have to write the statement in the form of a lemma, and if it's already present in the notes or something like that, then we don't have to prove it, right?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. And will it be open book?
Yes.
Okay, so thank you. And everything is in the syllabus except differentiability before differentiation, right?
Yeah.
And what's the timing for ASM tomorrow?
Sorry?
10:30 to 12:30.
Yeah, 10:30 to 12:30, and then you have time to take a photograph, email, or the load to Moodle as the instructions would be, and so on. So half hour for that, that gives you 1 and a additional half an hour. So all that must conclude by 1:30, but I will try to put questions which I think are answerable in 2 hours. Okay.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
Sir, how many questions will be, like approximately how many questions will be in the exam?
See, giving a number of questions, unless I decide what the questions are, I won't say how many, because not all questions require equal time. Okay. And questions can be part 1, part 2, part 3, things like that. So therefore, total will be such that they should be doable in 2 hours easily. That is my aim. Okay. For example, this problem 2 here about sequential business. How much time do I think should I put if I ask this question? I'm not saying I'm asking this question, but 5 minutes, 8 minutes, 10 minutes? What are the choices? What do you think?
8 minutes.
Huh?
8 minutes.
10 minutes, okay. Yeah. So,
Sir,
yeah.
so you said you're available in the evenings. That like we can ask you questions in the evening. If you
Yeah.
haven't. When, sir? Like roughly from.
Yeah, so we can keep it 6 to 7.
Yeah. Okay. So thank you.
So, but alert me by sending a message, and we can do again a Zoom call. But send me a message that you want to be there. How many? Doesn't matter even if only one student. If you want, I will still be there. But I should have an idea. Okay.
Yes, sir.
And only those who write, I will send the Zoom link. I don't know whether this link will work at that time or not. I have to check with the Krishna Hanuman, whether this link will work, or I have to create another link, or I can always create a Zoom link which will be valid for 40 minutes. And if it comes out, we can do it again. So, not an issue.
So shall we create a group with you today? Like we can also ask the questions regarding the exam, if any, and the doubts regarding the exam on the group for tomorrow.
Yeah.
And also the timing will be decided on the group. So and it's tentatively on 7 p.m. right today.
No, 6 to 7. 6 p.m.
Okay. 6 p.m. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So thank you, sir.
Yeah. So put me on your common group, and currently 6 to 7. So you can just say, yes, sir, I will be there. So that, see, the only thing is that question, it may be faster if you send me the question either on email or on that group. Okay, what is the question? All right. Then I'll be better prepared. See, normally this is never an issue with me. But as I told you right in the beginning, about 6 months ago, there was a serious medical issue with me. And that has made my memory slow. Okay. It's not that I've forgotten everything, but it just takes a little time. And then I've struggled with like this, creating the proper open page on which I can write and so on and so forth. So with that aim, if you have sent me what is it exactly you want, I will do that. I can also do it even when we are on the group at that time, 6 to 7, but it would help if things are sent before. That's all. Okay.
Sir,
Yeah.
I have a question, like a doubt regarding uniform continuity. Can I ask now or?
Yeah, you can ask now.
Yeah. So, okay, if we have a continuous function on a closed interval and you remove the points, like the endpoints, it's still uniformly continuous, right? Like
Correct.
what was that?
Correct.
How do you go the other way around? Like, how do you show that if it's uniformly continuous on an open interval, then if you add the endpoints, it's still continuous. Like, we need to show that the limit exists, right?
Yes. So let me state it precisely what you are asking. Okay. So if you have, let's take just open interval 0 to 1. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, if you have a function which is uniformly continuous on the open interval 0, 1.
Yeah.
The
if we add 0 and 1 to it.
Yeah. So the condition you need to add 0 and 1 is the limit at 0 and limit at 1 should exist. Okay. Now I'm wondering whether uniform continuity will already give the limit existing or not, is what I'm debating for a minute in my mind. But necessary condition to extend it to the closed interval as a continuous function is that limits at 0 and 1 should exist.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Now, whether saying that it is uniformly continuous on the open interval automatically gives you that the limit must exist. Maybe, but I'm not
If it's
sure.
uniform continuous, it'll be bounded, right? So
Huh?
that should give the limit existing.
So bounded doesn't mean necessarily the limit exists. Bounded by itself doesn't say the limit exists. But uniform continuity may give the limit existing. Okay, I'll check this and tell you in the evening. I think it will, but I can't immediately write out a proof. As I said, each such thing is taking time for me. It should.
Yeah, sir. Yeah, I'll think about it.
So you can do it with the help of sequences.
Uniform continuity and sequences doesn't go well together, I say. How will you do it with sequences?
Sir, like if the bounds are A to B, then we can, and it's open interval, we can call some xn to be A plus 1 by n, and like A plus 1 by n should satisfy the uniform continuity, right? So like as it converges to A, so should f of A plus 1 by n.
No, how will you get that f of x plus 1 by n will converge given the uniform continuity of on that interval? That is in my mind. Yeah. So,
sir,
yeah.
sir, but can't we like, I had a doubt in this. I mean, like, can't we like just define f of the endpoint to some different point so that it's not continuous?
You can always define, but then that doesn't give you, we wanted that when can you extend it to a uniformly continuous function on the closed interval? That was the question, right? You can always add a point and give it a value so that it is not continuous, but then what does it do? It doesn't answer our question that we started out with.
Yes, sir. So,
yeah. I'm not getting, what is it that you are aiming to show? Hello, can you hear me?
yes, sir.
Yeah. So by changing that, it doesn't help. I mean, so one concrete statement I can make is that you have a closed function on an open interval. Okay. The necessary condition, necessary and sufficient condition to extend it to a closed interval, to a continuous function on the closed interval by adding the two endpoints, is that the limits as x goes to the lower endpoint or x goes to the upper endpoint of fx should exist and be finite. Then you, at those two endpoints, you give this value, and then the sequential thing will tell you that it is continuous. Okay. And then close bounded, so uniformly continuous. Now, the thing I am unable to resolve at the moment in my mind is that if you are already given that it is uniformly continuous on the open interval, does it automatically say that you can extend? That is the thing I am slightly hesitant to commit.
Also, if we take cube root of x that in open interval 0 to 1, then it is uniformly continuous. But if we take it on closed interval 0 to 1, it is not continuous. So we can't like say that if it is uniformly continuous on open interval, then we can extend it to the.
No, it is not uniformly continuous. If you, it depends on how you define it. Is uniformly continuous on. So what is your, once again, the question to start with, or the statement? You take cube root of x as the, what is the domain for which you are defining it?
open interval 0 to 1.
Open interval 0 to 1. Yes.
So then like it is uniformly continuous.
And you can extend it and it will still remain uniformly continuous to the closed interval 0, 1. Where is the problem?
I think sir, at like closed interval 0, 1, it is not like at 0, the curve becomes like perpendicular to the x-axis.
No, it is continuous, but its derivative isn't defined at
Yeah.
0. But the cube root of x is continuous at 0.
Yeah.
No, I'm talking about uniform continuity. Like it was uniformly continuous in open interval 0 to 1, but if we extend it to the endpoints, then like the bounded interval, in the bounded interval, it won't be.
No, it will be. It will be 0 to 1. It will be uniformly continuous. Maybe you are also looking at the negatives, etc. You are looking at the how, if you approach from negative side, what happens? But that we are not approaching. We are only approaching from the positive side.
Sir, I have a proof of that if it is open bounded, then it should be, then we can extend it.
Open set on which it is uniformly continuous, then you can extend it. Okay, tell me.
So at the end points, when we add points such that it is continuous, we can give the values of functions as the limits in the end, at the end points.
No, but firstly, you have to show that the limit exists.
Oh, okay. I got the problem. Sorry.
Yeah, you have to first show that the limit exists. It should, as I said, while just now, maybe within 5 minutes, I will be able to write out a proof, but at the moment, I am not able to write the proof. So,
sir.
Yeah.
So for that, we can show that f of a plus 1 by n is Cauchy. Would that not work?
Huh?
F of a plus 1 by n is Cauchy. Would that not work?
F of a plus 1 by n is Cauchy.
To show convergence.
Yes, you are right. You are right. So first we show, because uniform, continuous, etc., etc. So this is Cauchy, and then it is Cauchy, so it converges. So yeah, that should do it. Correct. So if you have a uniformly continuous function on an open interval, then the limit at the endpoints exists and can be extended to make it a closed. Yes, correct.
Oh yes, sir, I think that.
Yeah, correct, correct. Thanks. So who is the one who gave me this solution just now? What's the name?
Avinash Rathore.
Okay, Avinash. Thanks. So, obviously before my medical event 6 months ago, I would have been able to do it equally fast. Okay. But with that, at that time, 6 months ago, it was so bad that I couldn't even remember names of my friends. I could see them and remember them, but I couldn't remember what their names are. Slowly, as time went on, my memory has improved, and it is almost normal, except that it is taking time to, think about things which I used to know. But I'm glad that things have improved a lot, and actually this teaching gives me happiness, because it shows that okay, I can test out what all I can remember and where are my loose points. Okay.
Sorry, sir, we have another class. So like,
Okay.
can we?
Yeah, go, please. Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.